Talking about hard and intimate things is always easier with a friend. Hey, I'm Joy, and I have asked Bekah from the WayFM Midday show to join me today as we talk a little bit about my journey with postpartum depression. Bekah, you know, I've released a video, sort of a documentary on what I've been facing. If you haven't checked it out, there'll be a link with this. But it's a whole crazy journey to even get to a place where I was like ready to put this out into the world, because you've seen it. It's very vulnerable, and I cry through a lot of it. So I was so nervous. And now that I've done it, I'm glad I did, but I like second guessed myself a lot.
Yeah, I was, because it's very vulnerable, which I love, because I know that there are hundreds of women who are sitting at home going through the same things that you were going through a few months ago, thinking, I must be crazy. But like you said, that's a scary thing to do. So why did you decide to share? And even the thing that really hit me is you talked about how you were sharing before you were even fully out of that postpartum depression.
Yeah, I think I've grown up in the church, and it's a bit of a pet peeve for me when people are completely healed of something difficult. They say nothing when they're struggling. They put on a brave front. And then a year after, 2 years after, they say, well, I'm ready to tell you that I went through something really hard and I'm all better now, but like it happens and God healed me. I mean, it's still important to share. It is. But I always, when I'm going through a hard season, I'm craving some kind of a story where somebody's not completely better when they're telling it. And so I thought, well, maybe I just need to create that, because I know it's important to share a story that's very vulnerable when you're far enough through and you're healthy enough to talk about it. And I knew I would get a response from a lot of other women who are struggling. That's my hope. That's what I've wanted. And I knew I needed to be able to engage with them. So I knew it couldn't be a season when I was falling apart every day. I had to be healthy enough to know that I could handle whatever came from sharing it. And so I feel like the timing was right, but I started talking about this 4 months ago because I do this radio show just like you do, and we say that we're real and we share our lives. And there were days, months ago, that were really hard for me to laugh and smile on the air. And the timing didn't feel right because I was too deep in it to even have words. But I said, I think I want some help in telling this story. I think it's important, because what I noticed is a lot of women would say, yeah, I think I went through that, or yeah, I never told anybody, but it was really tough. And I didn't come across a lot of women who were honest and told all the dark bits. And so I just felt like there was like a gap in motherhood conversation about this.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me, because in the video, and again, you can see that at wayfm.com, and I'm sure it'll be linked here on the podcast too, but you talked about some of those intrusive thoughts you had, and it really kind of took a neighbor saying, I had this exact thought verbatim to kind of make you think, oh, I'm not alone. So I did kind of an experiment. I post on my Instagram stories like, hey, if you've dealt with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, which is a different side of that, like what were some of your intrusive thoughts? And Joy, I thought I'd get one or two. I heard from 40 women.
Whoa.
Who all have beautiful families, healthy kids.
Wow.
They're involved in their lives. They're godly women. But I just want to read you a couple of these, but it's a long list.
Wow.
One person said, I had to be taken to the hospital because I thought I would take my own life. My PPD presented in the form of anger. I didn't feel connected. I worried I was ruining my daughter's life. I thought, I'm going crazy, but I can't tell anyone because they'll take my baby away. I didn't bond with my son. I was short-tempered and not there. Felt like I was failing. I wanted to crawl into my closet and never come out. I had thoughts of, I don't want this baby, which just made me feel worse. I wanted to drive my car into a wall. I wanted to leave my family. I believed that if I was gone, she would thrive and be better.
Wow.
The threads of this, and some of those, I didn't go as deep in as some of these dark thoughts, but the threads were so common that this is something that not every mom, but a lot of moms have struggled with. Why do you think it is that this is something that's just not talked about, that you're not verbalizing those dark thoughts?
I think because motherhood is so beautiful. And if we're honest, there are so many women, and maybe you're one of those watching this, who have struggled with infertility or loss of a child. And those are such devastating, painful blows that if you are blessed enough to have a child, especially one who's healthy, you think, I'm the luckiest woman in the world. And then when it doesn't feel magical or it doesn't feel joyful or you struggle, you think, well, I can't tell anybody because I've just been given the greatest gift that God bestows on people. I got to bring life into this world. I have like this wonderful baby, and there are moments that are magical. And so I think then when you have a moment that's really dark and difficult, I think we're afraid of judgment of other women and moms saying, how dare you say anything when like I can't even have a kid? Or when I was really struggling on the show, a woman reached out and said that she wasn't going to listen anymore because she was so sick of me complaining about motherhood that's supposed to be such a beautiful gift. And I was just in such a dark place that I didn't know the things I was saying were coming off as complaining, but I wasn't sleeping. I was hardly eating. My hormones were crazy. And so we're afraid of the judgment for one. And I think for two, we don't even want to admit to ourselves that that stuff is real, that it's happening to us. We want it to be beautiful. You want it to look like the movies that end when they have this like beautiful family and they're swinging or they're holding hands. That's what you want it to be. And then to say out loud, I'm thinking this, kind of shatters like what you hope this beautiful season will look like. And I really struggled, Bekah. I wasn't even sure if I was dealing with postpartum depression at first because I would have moments of sheer joy when I would hold my baby and I would cry because he was so precious and perfect. And so then I would hold on to that to be like, well, I'm not dealing with postpartum depression because I had a really happy moment yesterday, or I had a good day the other day. And I was just trying to hold on to anything that didn't connect me with something that felt embarrassing or like shameful.
So knowing that and being able to kind of look back and see that, no, you were dealing with postpartum depression, what would you say to a brand new mama who's watching or listening right now, who is thinking like, man, I don't always feel connected, but like we had a good day yesterday, but the day before that, I just wanted to shut myself in the bathroom and cry. What would you say to that mom? Kind of a first step to maybe identify if this is going on in their life.
Yeah, I would say you don't need to freak out and say, oh, sometimes this is really hard and I cry a lot, or I want to just like you said, hide away or be in the closet. I actually think that's like normal motherhood because it's such a drastic change. And I actually think, I mean, it's scientifically proven that your hormones go through something that is so difficult that all moms experience a very vast array of emotions, especially in the first few months. So for me, what it took was, I did it in a counseling setting with my Christian counselor, but you could do it. And I said, I don't know if I'm experiencing postpartum depression or not. So she just Googled and we pulled up symptoms of postpartum depression and she just read them out loud to me. She was like, are you experiencing this? Are you experiencing that? And I would say yes or no. And it was even very revealing to me because I said yes to most of them. And one of them, Bekah, it's like kind of funny, even though it's kind of not funny. She said, well, you cry often. And she looked at me and said, well, how often do you think you cry? And I said, probably only like 5 or 6 times a day. And it was so my reality, Bekah, that I thought, well, that's not that many. And then her eyes got really big and I just went, is that a lot? And she was like, And then, like I told my husband later and he was like, oh, it's a lot. You cry a lot. And I was like, sometimes it's happy tears, but like, you get defensive. You're like, sometimes it's because I'm happy. But I was so deep in it, especially when you go through maternity leave and things, you're home alone, especially if you're a mom in this pandemic season like I am. You don't have a lot of interaction. So suddenly you're just like, well, this is just how things are. And you might need to read through the symptoms and go, if enough of these are me, I might need to say something to my doctor. And you have to go to checkups with your baby. So either saying something to your pediatrician, or for me, I had a checkup with my doctor who delivered the baby. And I just said something to him like, I don't know if I'm experiencing this. And he's actually the one who was able to kind of help get me some medication and help.
And that's, you bring up Googling symptoms. And that was one thing. I have a friend that went through postpartum anxiety because she thought, well, I'm not dealing with the depression side of it. And then she Googled, like, I wonder if there's like an anxiety element. And then she checked all those boxes.
I didn't even know that.
But she said the difficult part for her, though, was going to the doctor's office, and there was a checkbox that was like, I feel like I don't always have hope or something like that. And she said she struggled so hard with admitting she had an issue because she's like, well, I have faith in God. Like, I have hope. So this can't be me, right? How did you wrestle with that as far as like being able to admit that you were struggling, knowing that there's that faith element that we're supposed to be joyful and have all this hope, but you just weren't feeling that all the time?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because as a woman of faith, I think it's even harder to talk about these things, because just like you said, we are the kind of people who know our eternal security. We know that Jesus is enough for us. You know all of these answers, and yet your hormones and emotions and your body are crazy and you feel like you can't trust them. And so when I was in the deepest parts of it, there was actually a day where my husband, no offense to him, was asking me questions like, because he just didn't understand why my faith wasn't kind of carrying me through, and was just asking very pointed questions. And I was so exhausted that I was up for, I think, like a 3 a.m. feeding, having a conversation with God, which I wouldn't recommend making any big decisions about your life in the middle of the night when you're feeding the baby. And I was having this conversation with God, and I just thought, maybe I'm doubting my faith. Maybe I'm not like a good believer. Maybe everything about my relationship with God is a lie because it's not carrying me through. And then I had a day or two of full on like faith, doubt, shame upon shame that got me into a worse and worse hole, because I thought, why is my faith not enough for me to feel hopeful in this season? And I wish so badly that somebody would have said to me that you can still have a very healthy, thriving relationship with God that is solid, and still be a believing woman of faith and struggle with all of these things, because I still have such a strong relationship with God, but it was a really tough season. And I wish I hadn't like put so much shame on myself for days on end being like, do I really believe? Because I do. I was in a really tough spot.
And that's another thing. One of the women that I talked to, she mentioned, she's like, I went to my counselor. I told her some of the thoughts I was having, and she asked if I had taken every thought captive. And she's like,
no.
Taking every thought captive is the fire extinguisher, but my mind is on fire. Like, I need the fire department right now, because and that's, again, there are so many common threads, Joy. Like, I'm going to send you this entire document because I just think it'd be helpful for you to see it all laid out. But so many women said, like, I struggled with getting help because of my faith, but when I finally vocalized even my ridiculous thoughts out loud, it helped me get the help that I needed.
Yes.
And again, multiple women said there are tons of meds that are safe for pregnancy, safe for breastfeeding. And that is how I got through the postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety.
It's so interesting you even say that, because I talk to my doctors and things like that. Medication, something that I mentioned in the video, and I filled the prescription for the medication and I had it in my bathroom, and I said, I'm not going to take that. It's just there just in case, like, I have one of those really, really bad moments again, but I'm not going to be taking it, because I was concerned if it was healthy for my baby. And, you start Googling, and there's always those random stories that are like, yeah, like my baby had a reaction or something. And I just got so scared, and I thought, something I kept saying to my husband is, I don't want my issues and my inability to handle this well to affect our son in any way. And I thought, what if I take this medication and it affects him? And so I put it off. And then it took a moment. Someone who responded to you said anger. It took a moment when I responded in anger that was so clearly not me. And when things were calm, my husband said to me, you're just not yourself. You're just not. And I need us to figure this out. And it took him saying that I thought, I have this resource that I've not taken advantage of, and everybody has said that it would be beneficial. And so I started taking it, and it made a world of difference for me with my hormones. And I'm so glad that I did.
Yeah. So that's one thing that a lot of women said they can do, vocalizing the thoughts, having a community, having
Yes.
people in your life that have been through it. And then I asked them, like, what's something that others can do? Because you have someone like me. I've never been pregnant, but I want to support friends who have recently had babies or who might start vocalizing some of these thoughts and I don't know what to do. So I wanted to read some of these to you and see if they resonate. One thing was to check in on all of your mom friends. A lot of women said, I had postpartum after a miscarriage. I had postpartum after my 4th child that I didn't have with my first 3 kids. That sometimes those things get overlooked. The big one that was over and over again that was said was, do not show up unannounced at your house.
Nope.
And don't present them with any decisions, because that just made it so much worse. Having to make a decision of, what do you want for dinner? When can I come by? When can I see the baby? Just not putting any of that on a new mom's plate.
Yes, that's so good. And in this coronavirus time, I think we've learned like the beauty of the drop and go. You can just like drop a meal off and go. You can drop a coffee off and go. And like people would always stress, like, what is your coffee order? What do you want to eat? It's often such survival mode that like we'll consume anything on our doorstep. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It's the thought that counts. Or you can send a virtual gift card. But I think the beauty of all of this is the community communication that you were sharing and asking deep questions. I remember my friend Sarah came over to the house and she said, I'm just going to come and just be with you. And I'm going to like fold laundry or do dishes or whatever you need while you're with the baby. And if we get to talk, great. And so she came. And we finally got a moment to sit down. She said, how are you doing? And I said, good. The baby's great. He's, all the answers you're supposed to say.
Right.
And then she just kind of paused and said, okay, good. But like, how are you really doing? What's underneath? I know it's hard sometimes. Talk to me about that. And I didn't expect anybody to dig. And it was so just below the surface that I just exploded into tears and said, like, I'm not okay. And so I needed somebody to take the space and time. And that could be a text message. Like, are you really okay? Do you need to talk? What's been the hardest part? How can I pray? We use this app, Marco Polo. You could send somebody one of those. I mean, email, whatever it is. To truly reach out. Don't feel like you have to only do it in person. I think just checking on people, even if they don't open up or they're not dealing with it, they'll be grateful.
Yeah. What about husbands? Because obviously that's a big part of this equation. And one of the things that a lot of moms said was the days when my husband could just take over 100% so I could get a shower, like I felt a little bit more like myself that day. Like, what were some of the things that Hunter did for you that kind of just let you come up for air for a moment?
Yeah. He's like such a rock star. Just that's my story. He really is. He got up at night a lot. And because my baby's taking a bottle, he could do a lot of feedings and things like that. But yeah, sometimes he would say, like, when I was on maternity leave and it was just me and the baby all day, he would get home and say, like, I need you to get out of the house for a while. And I would just go for a walk. And I don't live that far from Bekah. And I would like walk my block over and over and I would listen to music and I would just cry because it was like I needed to get it out. And I didn't want to be upset around the baby. And my husband had seen enough tears. And I was like, I just kind of need to just get this out. And like moving felt really good. And so allowing me space, even though I couldn't go anywhere, to just be like, I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm just going to talk to God and I'm just going to get it all out. That was so helpful. And him just being really kind when I brought things to him that were really scary. We talked about intrusive thoughts and I think lies from the enemy, honestly. And so I was so scared. I talk about this in the video to share with him some of the thoughts that I had. But we know, even the Bible says, when you bring darkness into light, that there's power in that. And so God made it that way, that when we speak things out, oftentimes you can diagnose what's a lie versus the truth, or someone else can for you. And so kindly a husband's just being ready and willing to like have a moment to really ask the questions of their wives and then to respond in kindness and grace, even though it's hard because you're both tired, but to respond and not make a woman feel crazier, but to really listen and say, you know, we're going to, he's a lot of times, Bekah said, we're going to figure this out and we're going to get whatever help we need. And you're not crazy, like all those things to just, you can never say that stuff enough.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I feel like we covered so many good areas of this and so many good practical pieces of advice on how to be there for yourself. One woman said, they always tell you to trust your intuition with the baby. You have to trust it with yourself too. If something feels off, say that it's off. But are there any final thoughts that you have for women? I had a lot of women in my inbox that are like, I'm so excited to listen to this because I'm actually pregnant with my first right now. Anything that you just want to tell them just to watch for? I know we already kind of covered this, but any last thoughts of things that you think would be helpful for new moms?
I don't want to scare any moms who are like currently pregnant because this is not everybody's story, but not chemical, but hormone imbalances after birth are pretty regular. I mean, that's just something your body goes through. So knowing that you might cry a lot and you might feel like I don't know what I'm doing and feeling overwhelmed, those are just common things to feel. So know that that's okay, and know it's not going to feel like that forever. Something that I really struggled with, and this is my personality, but when I'm in a hard season, I can't imagine it not looking like that. I think, and especially when you've just had a kid, you don't know what the future is going to look like. And I thought, it's going to be this hard forever. And people would say it wouldn't. And I would just be like, well, we don't know, do we? My kid could be the one who never sleeps. You know, you're just very, very stressed. But I now 8 months in can say every season is different. And to me, the very beginning was so hard that it got easier and easier. And now he can sit up on his own and he can like hold his own bottle and all of those things. And he sleeps more and it all is easier. And so I don't want you to feel discouraged if you are experiencing postpartum depression. It's not always going to be like that. And I even need to remind myself of that because I'm not all the way out of this. But I know that every day that I'm seeking help and seeking the Lord's strength, I'm like one step closer to being the version of me that's healthy and can enjoy this to the fullest.